All right, coming up on this episode, we go through the January jobs report, which was a huge win. We talk about fiber optic cable being laid by Frontier, and we wrap it up with a talk about Google's foray into the AI world, all coming up next.
All right, so talk to me about the jobs report. What's going on?
Well, this is one of these famous, semi-famous situations where good news is bad news, and this was an interesting one because it way blew the numbers out of the water. It was much higher than anticipated. So the numbers were the estimates were 187,000 pay. We're going to add that many jobs in the month, but it was 517,000, and the unemployment rate fell to 3.4%, which is the lowest of May
Whoa.
1969. So that's pretty significant. All that we've talked before about the tech headlines of the layoffs, and all those are big numbers, right? I mean, Microsoft, Google lays off, into the five figures, but other than that, the jobs numbers have been pretty good. So you would think the market would cheer that and be excited and say, well, that's good. The economy's running. But one of the things that that the Federal Reserve is trying to do in a way is to slow the economy down a little bit because it gets ahead of itself and then it can cause inflation. So they've been laser focused on trying to solve the inflation problem. And you solve that in theory by raising rates and slowing the economy down a little bit. So a really good jobs number can be inflationary because it pushes wages up because there's more demand, because there's fewer workers out there and is the available pool. So now the thing is, well, now the Federal Reserve is going to raise rates a little bit more because the economy is running a little bit too hot, and higher rates are typically bad for stocks. So the market did go down Friday after the news. So it's an interesting time because it's the good news is bad, and sometimes bad news is good as it relates back to what the market's doing and what the Fed's doing.
Wow. So the man just can't stop keeping us down, huh? So
yeah,
it's
it's definitely the
good
man.
news. The unemployment's low. Everybody's employable. Everybody's everybody. I'm using generalization, but the economy added what was it, 500,000 jobs in
Yeah.
the month of January. And then the man's got to say, whoa. Now is the time to raise rates and make things a little more expensive for you to buy.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is that as rates go up, he's actually trying to curb inflation, so trying to slow down inflation. So making it more expensive to borrow for sure, but making it more expensive for companies to borrow, which in turn will slow them down a little bit and slow the inflation numbers. So
Now,
that's supposedly how everything's supposed to work, but
right.
the phrase you hear a lot is soft landing, right? Is he going to be able to slow the inflation number down without completely, throwing us into a deeper recession? So that's the CNBC soundbite that you always get, right? Are we going to have a soft landing? Is Chairman Powell, is he going to be able to orchestrate a soft landing here? So that's the question, right? Can he raise rates the appropriate amount at the appropriate time to slow inflation without really putting a significant headwind on the economy?
What is the current rate from the Fed?
Well, so what they're able to do is they're able to adjust what's considered the short end of the curve. So they can't do anything about the 2-year, 5-year, 10-year. They just affect the overnight rate, and then that kind of spreads through the market. So the overnight rate
Are you still
here.
presenting? Because I'm not showing your screen right now.
Did it leave?
Well, I wasn't sure if you had
Oh,
something to share.
no, I was just going to look up what the
Okay.
what the Fed overnight rate is. Nathan can cut out this part. Yeah. So the overnight Fed funds rate is 4.58.
Okay. So
And
that's not
that's pretty
zero
significant.
anymore, because it was like near zero for a bunch of years in the teens, right?
Yeah. Yep. So it's been pretty for basically 10 years. It's been almost zero. So
Now, can I ask you a really technical question, which I don't hold, it may be malphrased or not.
yeah.
So the Federal Reserve effectively lends the U.S. government money, right? And then the economy pays back the reserve in interest.
The Federal Reserve would be so they set the overnight lending to banks. So it's the rate that banks are borrowing money overnight to make sure that all the financial systems everything can run smoothly there. So that's what they're doing there.
The lead I'm trying to lead the line of questioning to is in essence, is it no, I don't want to lead. I don't want to be leading in my question, but is it healthy, in fact, that the Fed's interest rate makes its way back up? Because in essence, if our economy is producing and hot, 500,000 jobs in a month, and now's the time to raise the rates, that opportunity to raise the rates, doesn't that in a way kind of contribute to an even more healthy economy if the Fed is if we're paying back the Fed in how much does this relate to the federal debt or the debt that we always hear about?
Well, it relates well. So that's a few different questions rolled into one, but good question. So a healthy economy should be able to support a higher interest rate, right? So you hear phrases like, well, the market got could even be the housing market, but they got addicted to cheap cash or whatever. So you hear that like fundraising when it's in Silicon Valley or something. It's like, well, geez, if you can borrow money at 0 or 1 or 2% for 10 years, it makes it very easy to make that loan profitable, right? So a higher rate makes people a little bit more conscious of what they're doing and how to if you're buying a house at 0% interest rate, it's maybe an easier thing to afford a much higher house than you normally would be able to afford. So a healthy interest rate for mortgages is probably 5 to 7%, depending on who you'd ask. So you want the market to be able to support a healthy. You don't want the housing market to continue to fly only because interest rates are very low. You want a healthy, normalized market. So when he's raising rates, he's trying to normalize everything, because you want to have what you'd say is you want to have some dry powder in case we do go through another major recession, or if there's some sort of cataclysmic event that's outside the area of economics. You want to be able to lower the interest rates to stimulate the economy. But if you're always at 0 or very low interest rates, you don't have anywhere left to go. You don't have that ability to help the market out and help the economy out by lowering rates. So you want to get it normalized, which is where he's getting it back to. So
But I mean, what is the ancillary benefit for when the Fed raises the rates? That is interest earned by the Federal Reserve or the banks for money borrowed, because that's how banking works. You borrow money, but you're going to pay a little bit for the borrowing.
Yeah, so they're
The revenue
setting
source.
yeah, so they're setting that overnight interest rate, and there's a lot of things that are pegged to that overnight interest rate. So the overnight interest rate moves, so that means that the rates that are going to be charged on, let's say, borrowing for 1 month moves, and then 3-month moves, and then so far down the line. So that's why you'll see when there's an adjustment in the overnight rate of what the Fed does, you'll see the short-term interest rates fluctuate a lot more than the longer-term rates. In fact,
Do the banks get healthier when the interest rate goes up?
banks like a higher interest rate because they're making money on a
Their revenue
spread.
goes up, right?
So yeah, so they prefer interest rates to go up a little bit, and you notice that when it's a rising rate environment, bank stocks tend to do a little bit better, because it's easier for them to make. So let's say when interest rates are 0, they don't if they're making, let's say interest rates are 50 basis points and the bank is making 50 basis points on that, the spread makes it look like it's a lot. The percentage of what they're making versus what the rate is 1 to 1. Whereas if the difference is like, let's say 6 to 6.5, they're still making that 50 basis points, but it doesn't look as egregious, let's say, as the 50 to 50. So banks like a little bit higher interest rate, but then they don't want it to go too high so that people stop taking out mortgages.
Right.
The issue right now, what's happening is they're not paying enough on their savings accounts, according to, let's say, that's the opinion of some senators and Congress folks were. So they've had to come before do the dog and pony show, come before Congress and give indications of when they plan to move those interest rates up. Because if they're lending out at 5, 6, 7% and then only paying you 0.5% on your savings account, they're making an awful lot of money on that spread. So you have some people in the government saying, "Hey, what's going on here? Why haven't you raised the interest
Yeah,
rate?"
I'm pretty sure in my entire life, saving money was never in besides the effect of having money. It was saving money was never an important investment vehicle for an individual, right?
Yeah, like the actual savings accounts. Yeah, I mean, for both of our lives, we've been in basically declining interest rate environments for the last 40 years, so we've never really had that. And you and I have never really uh, dealt with an inflationary period either. So you've never had that situation where the cost of goods is going up, meaning that money that you have in your savings account is worth less and less, right? You're able to buy fewer and fewer eggs with that same money that you have in savings.
Didn't we just go through that over the last 8
Yeah.
months?
Yeah. Before this, I
Okay.
mean, the last year or so has been the first real inflationary period we've had. So people are looking at that and saying, well, if I put money into savings, I'm just losing money because everything else is going up. So
Right.
it's a lot of moving parts here,
Huh.
but
There was one more question I wanted to ask you. Oh, last question with completely left field. Any news on the Fed's exploration of a digital currency?
no, it hasn't really been a hot topic issue. I know. So Fidelity was a major player, obviously, in the 401k space, and there was some Elizabeth Warren was urging them not to get involved in the crypto
Oh,
space.
Elizabeth
Um,
Warren, with her
yeah,
infinite wisdom, she's just great.
yeah, I think it's probably a little bit overblown there. I'm not seeing a lot of demand for it right now. I'm not seeing a lot of plan sponsors, meaning business owners. I'm not seeing them ask for it, and I don't think Fidelity is getting much demand for it. But I think they're just trying to position themselves long term, and everybody else will kind of follow that lead. And I'm sure there's channels, boardrooms having discussions about different ways to access crypto and 401ks and stuff.
And crypto's certainly cooled right now, and a lot of the bruising is probably hasn't the purple hasn't gone away from the bruising, I think, of the crypto crash, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, it hasn't grabbed the headlines that it was getting, a month or so ago. Although there was an issue with Binance. Was it Binance this week? And
Binance
they're
just made a headline, something about they're not taking dollars anymore, or
yeah, they're not converting back to dollars. I think it was so U.S. dollar transfers. So that stuff is always sort of scary. But at least people have had enough time to kind of hopefully prepare and move their stuff to where it needs to be. But
yeah. I Every once in a while I post on social, check on your crypto friends.
yeah, right. Although it's done pretty well the last couple months. Bitcoin, at
What's
least.
Bitcoin doing right now?
Bitcoin right now is
Where are they? 20 seems to be the benchmark lately.
yeah, and I don't know if it hit 24. It's close to 23 right now.
All right.
Um,
So for the last 6 months, that seems pretty healthy relative.
yeah, yeah. I think we made it as low as 17 or 16.
Cool.
Yeah, definitely in the 16s. But
Well, there you go. That's the jobs report for January. Thanks for covering that. That's I guess that amounts to our finance piece of the show. So on the technical front, I thought this was interesting.
hmm,
So do you have fiber internet at home?
we don't have it available on our street yet. Nope.
Who's your carrier? Can I ask that?
Yeah, so
Charter?
we have Cox
Cox.
cable.
Okay. And what is your subscribed internet speed?
That's a good question. I think they say they call it the gigabyte system
The gigabyte
package,
plan?
but yeah, but our upload speed is still around between 40 and 50 usually.
That's what that was the next thing I was going to ask you, what your upload speed. So the
Download's
likes
pretty
of,
good, usually 600 or 700, but upload still 40 to
yeah.
50.
So the cable companies, from my unscientific survey, appear to really choke the upload speed of your internet. So the way the internet connection works for the non-technical out there is it's a highway of data, and there's an upload or a north, and there's a download south, upload and download. And the internet companies can control the speed in both directions. And historically, upload bandwidth has always been a premium, and it's always been choked. And what upload gives you at your home, if you have a fast upload speed, is how much data can you send to the internet. So if you're running a file server and you're trying to send files to people, or up to the cloud, or if you're taking a ton of photos at home or a ton of video and you want to upload that to your iCloud or digital storage, the upload speed is how fast you can get that up to the internet. And then, of course, once it touches the server, if you needed to pull it back down, you'd be using your download speed. So the cable companies, it seems, advertise the download speed as the effective speed, but it's kind of in the fine print is they choke your upload. So in your case, and I had somebody reach out to me to talk about this. I think Comcast even was giving a gigabit on their gigabit plan, 1,000 megabits per second down, which is a gigabit is 1,000 gigabits. So you have 1,000 down, but they were only providing like 30 up, which is laughable.
Yeah.
We finally have we have GoNet Speed here at my house, which is a local fiber provider, and it reminds me of like the T-Mobile of internet service. It was just like, it's the anti-internet provider. There's no hidden fees, there's no secrets, there's no gotchas. The internet speed they provide is symmetrical. So they have a gigabit plan. I don't even subscribe to it because I know, based on our usage, we don't need a gigabit. I don't need anything to come down any faster than 500. But what's important is it's symmetrical. So we have a 500 down and 500 up. So connecting with you through this channel is really easy. Uploading photos and video editing is easy. So there's a little background of the internet. So when I saw this headline, Frontier, now I remember, do you remember Frontier bought the internet assets from AT&T about 8 years ago, I think?
I do remember that, yeah.
And it was a total catastrophe. Like I don't even know where Frontier came from, but we were seeing that. We literally had clients calling us because their internet was down, and it was in a multi-use building or multi-tenant building in Hartford or one of the cities. There's data closets in the basement where the service comes into, right? And Frontier was just like unplugging our client's service to reappropriate that copper to another tenant. and it was like in early days of their acquisition of the AT&T assets, and it was just a nightmare. I mean, it happened repeatedly. They just didn't have anything indexed or anything. So and so Frontier is not a company that I look at fondly for a long time. But when they get a headline like this, Frontier rolls out 5 gigabit per second fiber internet across the US, that's pretty compelling. So I don't have any personal experience with Frontier lately, but hopefully they're operationally mature enough. And when they make a headline like this is pretty telling. The other thing too is it's pretty competitive. I think they said, let's see, $155 a month for, I think, I don't know, their 5 gig plan. And they were very specific in this mentioning that it's symmetrical. See that's the key right there, symmetrical. So, yeah, that's what I wanted to report on. When you see a big telco dropping a headline that they are rolling out more fiber, it's better for everybody. Fiber is symmetrical. You want more symmetrical service, and quite frankly, you want competition in this space. Because the only way that the internet service gets better is when there's competition.
Right. And so in a situation like this where they say rolls it out, they literally mean rolling it out, right? They have to put in physical cable to make this work.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. It's there's no shortcut around these internet companies having to spend significant capex to roll out the infrastructure, because that's what it is. It's an infrastructure. So yeah, they are literally trucks on the street rolling out. I mean, you remember when Verizon, I think Google had Google Fios.
Mhm.
Verizon, I think 2012 announced that they were rolling out fiber everywhere. I think, and then they announced that they were pulling back from that fiber deployment. Um, the East Coast, I think, saw a lot of it, but it's not everywhere.
And is this because do we anticipate at some time everything going wireless through either cell networks or satellites or because to the layman, when you hear about rolling out cable and stuff, it's like, really, are we still doing that?
Well, you know, Wi-Fi is a short range technology,
Yes.
so it's you really do need to get a hard wire to you really want a physical wire or connection to as many homes and businesses and endpoints as possible, and then supplement those endpoints with Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi is getting much better. Um, Cellular, with their 5G deployment, they're really trying to compete with land-based internet service providers. But the reality is wireless is a limited resource. There's the radio spectrum filled with frequencies, and we have aviation, we've got citizens band, we've got FM radio. You would know more than me, maybe even like all the ways that you've got the military,
Mhm.
you've got broadcast TV in there somewhere. So like you've got a finite resource that everybody's trying to divide up and use, and um, and internet and or the cell service is another one of those. So it's a limited resource, and the technology that they've used, they've implemented and developed to get use out of. Every time I see a new Wi-Fi standard, I'm amazed. I'm like, wow, you guys figured out how to split the hair again.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in college when Wi-Fi first came out, it was 11 megabits per second, and it was you could only have like a couple, maybe a dozen or so
Mhm.
connections to the access point, and it was and that was time divided. So for every wireless device you put on the network, the collective network got slower. You know, so yeah, it's always impressive when they keep adding wireless technologies. But yeah, I mean, so I guess to answer your question, you want as much physical connectivity as possible and get that as close to as many people as possible. That's how you're going to get the most reliable and fastest speeds. And then you use wireless as the endpoints to make things more comfortable for the users. You do, even in your home, if you're able to do it. I think we have over 100 wireless devices or 100 network devices in my house already. And you definitely want to wire as many things that you can. So if you can get Ethernet to your TVs, if you can get Ethernet to your computers, if you have stationary computers, or if you have a stationary workspace that you work from frequently, you want to wire everything. Unless you really are like a family of three, not particularly tech savvy, you don't have smart lights, Wi-Fi white light switches, doorknobs, doorbells, if you're not really going crazy like that. But I mean, let's face it, it seems like every appliance you buy now has Wi-Fi on it.
Yeah. Yeah. I was running speed tests as you were talking there. So my download is 750, but my upload is 32, which is funny. And then on the cellular network for my phone, it's download 61 and upload 10. So um,
Yeah, so that upload is really the crime again.
yeah,
That's really the crime. The crime.
right, because that's not a technology issue. That's just a provider issue.
Right.
throttling that.
And that speed test was really interesting. Why was my download so slow, but my upload is 150? That is an unusual test. So I wonder if that's related to me streaming right now with you.
Yeah. And I think most people with average use probably aren't going to notice a ton of difference. I know when we upgraded our system here to the latest router and the latest plan, like I didn't really notice any issue with like day-to-day use. But if you're uploading big files or, when we're uploading stuff to YouTube or whatever, that matters. But as
Yeah,
far as like regular streaming, watching services or whatever, it didn't really
I'll
matter.
put it in context. So you only need so if you're watching an HD stream from Netflix, you only need, I think, about 12 here. You need 0 here and you need 12 here. So if you're watching Netflix and you have over 12 megabits per second, Netflix is downloading as much of the video you're watching as there's it's called a buffer. So they'll actually go ahead of what you're watching and pull it down just in case there's a blip in the matrix or, in your connectivity or whatever. Now they have a buffer. So yeah, as long as you're exceeding the HD requirement of 12. Now that's 12 mega. I think it's 12. Don't quote me. You can Google it and somebody will tell you exactly what an HD stream needs for bandwidth. I think it's 12 because I think 4K is 25. So, but then if you have 3 houses or 3 TVs in the house watching an HD stream, you can imagine that this gets saturated pretty quick. And then if the kid pulls up YouTube on his phone and his phone is asking for an HD stream, you have 4 things that could chop that down pretty quick. So, but again, they're all buffering. So if there's a pause over here and a pause over there, whatever, it's going to pull that down. The other thing that the software will do is it'll downsample. So if it detects that it's hitting some upper threshold of your speed limit, you may or may not notice, but your HD 1080p stream may downsample to 720. And if you're not really keen to it, you may not even notice that you're getting a down. You may see some artifacting or glyphing real quick, and then it'll kind of like re-clean the screen, I guess. But you just like the software downsampled to try to give you the continuity in your stream.
Right. You'll see the little squares sometimes sort of pop in there. And unless it's something super, unless you're watching sports or something.
Yeah, but most people will be like, you can attribute that maybe even to the slowness of your Fire Stick or the device. So you don't always know is the device glitching or kind of choking a little bit, or is it the internet service? And then of course for email and web browsing, you need like 1.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's it's really.
And the life cycle for televisions is a lot longer than it used to be. I know we haven't bought, like when we moved in, we, bought a couple things, but I mean, the TV that's in our bedroom is something my wife had since before we got married. And it's like,
Same
because
here.
you're usually kind of half watching it anyways, you're falling asleep or whatever. But, so it's probably not 4K. It may not even be 1080. It might be 720 at the max anyway.
Yep. TVs, I'm notoriously not. That's not where I spend my geek dollars on. I can recognize a high quality. I can recognize a high quality picture, and my preference is an HD, or 4K picture. But I don't obsess over it, and quite frankly, because like I remember, you remember this probably too when HD was rolling out. HD. So you had your 4x3 tube TVs, and then the widescreens came out, and even those were low definition or standard definition. And then they came out with widescreens, high definition, but high definition was really only 490p, I think, and people didn't really know what this stuff was. So then you overbuy the TV, you spend all this money on this TV, but then the broadcasters aren't recording and pumping that level of content to your screen. So now you're like overpaid on the TV, and then you might get like the one commercial or the one. Remember those times where like you'd get one picture or one movie or something that was like, or one TV show that was recorded in HD, and you're like, oh man, that looks so good,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even like YouTube TV, and they still try to upsell you on the 4K package. It's like, I don't even think we have a 4K
I don't
TV,
have a
and
four. I think my father in his living room he has a 4K, but we don't have 4K TVs around the house.
it's
It,
interesting, big picture, how much the idea of big picture. Huh, that's funny.
the big
But it's
picture.
funny, like the attention that people have. I mean, people aren't, even if it's a sporting event, it's pretty rare that there's something that's like must see. But even at the Super Bowl, most people are going to have their phones out half the time anyway, you know.
Yeah.
And a lot of
I,
people's eyes really can't tell the difference anyway. Like my wife's eyes aren't that great, so the idea of having like a 4K TV in the bedroom or something with her glasses off would be completely useless.
That's true. That's true. I am looking forward to the day when I'll do, a hardware refresh and all of the content has, all the cameras out on studios and all the
Mhm.
cameras out in stadiums and all the broadcast equipment is 4K and that's the standard. And this 5 gigabit connection, by the way, from fiber or from Frontier, like that really is important for the transition to 4K too.
Yeah.
The SD cards, micro
Yep.
SD cards, they're putting like 2 terabyte micro SD cards
I
now.
know.
You know what I mean? And that's important because in order for 4K to become ubiquitous and fully adopted everywhere, like we need large storage, we need fat internet connections, because those data files, those picture files are so big. And I do look forward to the day when, like, yeah, the 4K is the standard and everything looks nice and crisp. But for
Yeah.
now,
What's interesting, have you seen the TVs that are now that have the battery packs, which is kind of interesting? So one of the nuisances, if you're placing a TV or hanging a TV, is running the electric wire and stuff like that. So
or the
now
wireless
they have
ones, yeah.
like a slim sort of battery pack that fits behind the TV that'll last, I don't know how long it lasts, maybe 40 hours or something like that. And so you plug it in, you can just basically hang it anywhere. It's like a picture, and you're like, I want to, hang this over here or whatever. That kind
Wow,
of.
I haven't actually seen that. I did see at CES, the Consumer Electronics Trade Show in Vegas. It happens every year in January. They were big on wireless TVs.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's all the wires. I mean, it's because you don't have to plug it in.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know if I would want to have to charge my TV
Yeah, it does
daily.
seem you'd have to get a significant battery life. You'd
Or like a
probably be able to
battery
make it worthwhile.
rotation. If you have one
Yeah.
charging and you're one using, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty interesting.
To nobody's surprise here, anyways, Google announces its forthcoming competitor to ChatGPT.
Yeah, so they've got a couple different programs that they're working on. One is sort of in-house, and then the other one is a little bit external, which is that Bard that's been making the headline. So you knew obviously they weren't going to sit around and just let this go to Microsoft or OpenAI. So we'll see what happens there.
Have you picked at this yet? Have you looked at anything? I mean, I don't see anything. I don't see a product drop. Do you?
Yeah, it's not available yet to the general public, I don't believe. I think it's just internal.
Yeah, to me this looked like a big nothing burger because it looked like a Me Too moment for Google. It didn't look like let's see, the AI will act as an experimental conversational AI service for its users. Like, I don't know. I mean, we know it's coming, but if I can just be frank, I'm nonplussed, as they would say in the geek world. This did not blow my hair back. What did you get anything from this?
No, I really didn't. I think Microsoft's got a little bit of a lead here, and I think they're already planning to have it integrated with Bing. They're having it integrate with Microsoft Word and things like that to pull in that content. So I think they've got a little bit of a lead here. We'll see how quickly Google catches up.
So you say Microsoft, not ChatGPT or OpenAI.
Correct. Yeah. I've just use Microsoft because Microsoft they have the audience, they have the platform to integrate it. I mean, OpenAI has an API that you can get to, but I think Microsoft will probably be, if they can integrate that with Word, which I'm sure they've probably already done internally, I think that's when it goes from being sort of a geek thing that people try once or twice and then get back to the real world to something that, your parents might use, or somebody who's not necessarily in that world yet,
Yeah. So I just highlighted a section of this article from Engadget. The program will not simply be open to the internet as ChatGPT was. Google is starting with the release of a lightweight version of Lambda, which requires far lower system requirements than its full spec brethren for a select group of trusted users before scaling up from there. So, like that's what I mean. Like, we know it's coming, but this release seemed a little thirsty, if you ask me.
Yeah. I mean, to announce something, before you've done it is like, all right, the tech world is very much show me, like
Show
anybody
me.
can.
And that's why ChatGPT blew everybody's minds, because it was there. You logged in, you created an account, you typed your first query into ChatGPT, and this thing spoke back to you.
Yeah. Yep. Have you seen any of the stuff of, so they call it, trying to remember the phrase here, but, um, Nathan, I'll have to edit this part out, but hallucinations. Have you looked into the hallucinations?
No.
So hallucination is when an AI program like this decides it's not going to just say, I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, but basically make something up or uses bits and try to pull stuff together. So there's been some internet posts and Reddit posts about asking, like, who's the CEO of Twitter? And at one point, the ChatGPT said that Elon Musk was, which it shouldn't know because technically they say it only knows through 2021. But then it went
Oh.
off on this crazy rant about the either Musk or the previous CEO being killed in a car accident and all this sort of wacky stuff. So there's been instances where it's sort of gone off the rails to try to come up with something, and what it's produced have been completely false, which is sort of scary.
I'm a little surprised that um, the thing doesn't like cite its sources.
That's
You
an
know,
issue too. Yeah.
yeah. So I don't know if you ask it to cite its sources, if it would, and I hope that they implement that. I hope that it comes to the point where, like, if it can't ascertain an answer, that it simply just gives you real speak. Like, this is, like, you guys all know, for all 19 of our subscribers, that I'm all in on the smart assistant, right? I want Jarvis. I want Jarvis really, really, really bad. Like, not because I'm lazy, but because, like, I see that, as Tony Stark did in the movies. um it amplified his abilities. Still, he was a genius, but, like, he used a smart assistant to amplify his genius, and that's the value I see. Listen, we can all walk our kids to school, but a car amplifies our time and our abilities. So I cannot wait until this technology makes it to the speakers that are in every room of my house, so that I can have dialogue based conversations with the AI to say, like, what's the weather today, like,
Mhm.
and have that kind of conversational experience. And the kids, when they start doing research for their homework and things, that they can start having this conversational experience with it. So that's what I'm looking for. But it would be nice. You have to have the system be like, hey, I don't have data on that, and
Mhm.
then maybe offer you some appropriate supplement. This seems relevant in the context. I don't have exact data on George Washington's birthday, but historians believe in large part that this and that and this and that. So it still remains a useful tool rather than just being a bullshit artist.
Right, right. And I think the other issue is going to be content producers. So people who are, writing an article, let's say something very specific for Field and Stream magazine or something about hunting conditions in northwestern Wyoming in the summer. So you ask ChatGPT and it finds that article, which might be the single source or the single producer of that content, and it just regurgitates that. And how does the producer, how does the original author get get paid on that sort of stuff.
Agreed.
And is
Yeah.
there, legal ramifications of the original producer saying, hey, listen, you served up this information as if it's your own, but you're no different than the fifth grader who copied the back of the book for your book report.
That seems like you and I are in agreement in that then.
Yeah, that could be a problem if it, and you're already
Yeah.
sort of seeing that a little bit with Google. People are not clicking on the links that are provided. They're reading the description or pulling the answer they want off reading the first 2 or 3 descriptions rather than clicking the link, which, obviously it's in the advertising business. So Google's in the advertising business, so they get the ad hit, but the
Right.
content producer who put out the content is not getting
Right.
that hit.
Right.
So that's unfortunate.
And hopefully the public education system will continue to teach critical thinking and teach that, when facts are espoused and they're supported by citations, it adds credibility to the work, right?
Right.
And instead of, and I don't want to be one of these who say like the world is coming to an end and our society is on fire, but it does seem a little bit like, well, if you spend any amount of time on social media and you see anybody flinging any news articles and trying to gaslight anybody, nobody's. It seems like a lot of people aren't using critical thinking, even when watching entertainment. And this is the word I'm applying to MSNBC and Fox News alike. Is that those are really entertainment sources. They're news. I don't know. I don't call them news because I don't think there's a lot of journalism happening there. You know what I mean?
Infotainment or something like that, right?
Infotainment, right. So, I watch both of them because I don't watch them. I cherry pick nuggets from both of them. I try not to live in an echo chamber. So I just kind of see, but if I spend too much time on either of them, it's like a big eye roll to me anyways. But I think that's credited to my commitment to critical thinking. When somebody says something, it's like, where are they coming from when they say it? What's the source of information that they're saying it? I don't know. This is my little rant, I guess.
Yeah, and as it relates back to these chat bots and AI, you wonder if that, just like the Google search algorithms can be played or be manipulated is probably not the right word, but be gamed, so to speak, where like
Right.
do this to your website to get on the first page of Google or whatever. It's
Right.
going to become, let's slam out 50 different websites with this fake news on it, and set it up in a way that Google reads this. So when somebody asks the question to Bard AI or ChatGPT or whatever, it's going to say, wow, 50 websites say this. This must be factual. There could be an instance where that becomes a problem too, where you're able to put out so much fake news that it overwhelms the system.
Right. So yeah, so full circle this for sure. Like the system hopefully will remind the users that this is according to, right? This information according to,
Yeah. And then
hopefully,
it all relates back to the reader too. If it cites 3 fake sources,
yeah.
I love that. You ever see the websites that are like the fake, where they'll sound like a local newspaper or something?
The Onion.
No, not like those, but they'll be like the Cleveland,
Yes.
source, whatever, or the Cleveland Daily
Cleveland
News or
10,
something like
Cleveland
that.
News 10, right? Or yeah.
Yeah,
Or yeah, I've seen that.
and they'll
Yeah.
make it look like it's an official website, but
Domestic to a region.
yeah, right. And you'll be like,
Yeah.
wow, they're reporting this, but it's not. It's just
Yeah, it's like Phoenix University, right?
right. Yeah,
Right. Everybody thinks that like that is Phoenix, Arizona's university, and
yeah.
it's not. It's an internet college, which I won't say any, whether it's valid or not, but it's definitely not. Am I getting that right? Is Phoenix University?
It's University of Phoenix, but they actually leaned into it because they bought the stadium rights in a stadium in Phoenix, Arizona.
Did they?
Yes. Yeah.
That's so hilarious.
Yeah.
That's so hilarious. Oh man, critical thinking. People, I've had way too many conversations with my father about things that he's he comes to me saying he just read this on the internet, he saw this on the news, he saw, and I'm like, Dad, you gotta apply critical thought, and his whole generation, just whatever Walter Cronkite reported was that was factual. And quite frankly, I don't know if Walter Cronkite ever had agendas. I didn't live through that era, so I don't know what that, if his content was kind of like dark line down the middle, like here's the information, or did Walter Cronkite have an agenda? Do you
I'm
have any
sure
insight?
people on both sides say he did, yeah.
Or
I
his
know
or
my
his
dad would talk about, certain networks or whatever that had an agenda. That's, probably his day is 60s, 70s, 80s, so I'm
Right.
sure it existed. Whether it was perceived or whether it was actual, who knows, but
Right. I mean, even Benjamin Franklin, if we're really going to go off the rails here, Benjamin Franklin had a newspaper. He owned a newspaper, I think, didn't
mhm,
he, in
sure.
Philadelphia? And he was a Politico,
Mhm,
and he used that medium to perhaps sway the hearts and minds. So
mhm.
critical
Well,
thinking.
yeah. I mean, the idea that this is something new or something different, I always kind of push back on that. It wasn't uncommon when newspapers were more popular, as you'd have two newspapers in town. You'd have, you'd have two papers in Hartford. One would be Republican, one would be Democrat, and you'd read the one that you wanted to read, that was a more comfortable read or whatever. So the idea that newspapers have always played it down the line, and recently it's turned into whatever, that I'll push back on a little bit from other people, but
Yeah. So I think as AI comes up, I really hope our society invests a lot of focus on critical thinking. Where's this information coming from? Both in a context of physically, where is this information coming from, and
yeah.
then where is it coming from the bent of the content producer.
Yeah, and do people have time to fact check, and then what becomes the source, right? If you're asking your smart speaker some information, are you gonna really say, "Well, that might be right, but let me go sit at the computer and Google it just to make sure that that's right?"
Well, there's value to information, right? If if the smart speaker tells me George Washington's birthday was January 29th, like I'm like, that's good enough. I mean, if it's off
Mhm,
a couple days or whatever, like I'm not wagering my house on it. I'm not wagering
right.
a grade letter on a report. But
Mhm,
if you're trying to evangelize information or an initiative or something like that, yeah, you might want to get your facts right and get it right. So
mhm.
there's value to the information, what you're doing with it. So
The most productive use case I had so far for ChatGPT was last night, actually. So my son's got this it's really a baby toy, and it's kind of funny because I was about to like throw it out or donate it, and he grabbed it and he's sort of latched onto it again, which is kind of funny. But it's this like giraffe's head on basically like attached to a little blanket. And so it kind of looks like a giraffe, but when you pull out the blanket part, it kind of looks like a bat. So somewhere along the line, it acquired the name Giraffe Batty. So he's got his little Giraffe Batty buddy. So I asked Chat GPT, I said, write me a story about a giraffe that has bat-like characteristics and lives in Connecticut. And it produced, like, I don't know, I didn't count it, but it must have been 400 words on this story. And it was, it wasn't great. If you knew it was, if you looked at it and said, "Is this automated?" You'd be like, "Yeah, it's probably automated." But to read it to a 5-year-old, he's like, "Oh wow, that to his like mind was blown that my phone had a story about his giraffe batty or whatever." And but
that's
something that doesn't need to be fact checked, something that I don't want to spend a lot of time on. It was kind of funny.
entertainment value. Yeah.
Entertainment value, that, and to come up with ideas. I like the lists, build me an outline of 10 topics about, fiber
Yeah.
cable or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
the
No,
value is so far.
that's interesting.